Hey, what's up, Internet? I'm Troy the Max Extreme.
And I'm Ghost Hunter Dave.
And this is IMPERIUS REX. Today's show we'll be going over Jeff Lemire.
We looked up the pronunciation of his name moments ago.
I know we're correct.
We're not going to embarrass ourselves like that whole Mignola incident.
We're off to a great start already.
Yeah.
Skeep beep boo doo doo doo.
Welcome back. So today we are going to do something a little different, and rather than just discuss a book that we've both read, we're going to do something different.
Good.
We're going to take a look at a chunk of work from a notable comic book creator, and with the recent release of his new Image title, Royal City, along with a potential movie adaptation in the works, seems like the perfect time to take a look at some of the books from Jeff Lemire.
Well, Canadian cartoonist famous for not only his indie work, which got him onto the map, but more recently for writing just a mountain of properties for the big publishers. Over the last decade, he has tackled Superboy, Animal Man, Justice League Dark, Green Arrow, and others for DC, before signing with Marvel to write Hawkeye, X-Men, Old Man Logan, Moon Knight, and Thanos.
All the big ones.
The big ones. And that's not to mention Bloodshot Reborn for Valiant Comics and a slew of others across Image, Vertigo, and Dark Horse as well.
When does this guy sleep, Troy?
He doesn't sleep, Dave. He is an automaton. He recently ended his 2-year contract with Marvel to return to more creator-owned work, which is going to be what we're talking about today.
Interesting. Well, I recently read the first issue of Royal City, which really seems like a return to form for him. And that's not to say that his big publisher titles weren't strong, but I feel like he's at his absolute best when he just has free reign over, his own creator-owned stories, along with the ability to write and illustrate every panel. So, the book follows the Pike family, father, mother, and adult siblings. They're all haunted by different versions of the youngest brother, Tommy, who drowned years ago as a child. And it's not really a ghost story per se, but it's very haunting in nature. In the afterword, Lemire himself scolds the use of the term slice of life story when describing his work. But there is an element of that phrase to his material, just without kind of the boring connotation that would go along with it. It deals with real issues, like a dying town, family loss, getting older, uncertainties, our place within the universe. And I think the reader can see shades of themselves in several of his characters. And it's impossible not to feel, their grief as they attempt to hold on to their personal losses in their own unique ways. Needless to say, this was a great first issue, and I'm excited to see where it leads.
To complement his most recent creator-owned work, we thought we'd take a look back at his first couple of books that help him make a name for himself. Jeff's career started in 2005 with an award-winning self-published book, Lost Dogs, part of a 24-hour comic challenge that sparked Lemire to take a break from his film major and dip his toe into the comic medium, Dave.
Makes sense.
Yes. Apparently he failed the challenge, only completing 12 pages within the 24 hours, but he wanted to finish it within the month and self-publish it. To finish what he started.
12 pages in a day. That's still pretty impressive.
That's impressive. It's a rough, brutal story about a strong man who loses his family and the violent tragedy that follows him on his search for inner peace. It is also the first glimpse of his trademark artistic style. That is a staple of his work today.
Yeah, he does have a very unique look. I mean, just by a glance, it's a Jeff Lemire book. So after that, he went on to his next publication, which was the Essex County Trilogy. This is a collection of stories all set in Essex County, Ontario, which he's Canadian, as we've mentioned.
And an automaton.
Yes. A lot of Canada in his work. These stories feature a variety of very human, relatable characters, all facing their own hardships, regrets, and personal adventures. Tales from the Farm is the first one. It's about a small boy raised by his uncle who befriends a kind of a slow-witted ex-hockey player as the only person that he can really connect with. It goes into kind of these imaginary, like, Space Invader adventures that they kind of play out in the woods.
Right
It's
on.
good. It's good. Ghost Stories features an elderly man, another hockey player, looking back and regretted his life. But then it kind of slips into this weird merging of the past and present, and it's good. It's kind of heartbreaking because it's this old guy just at the end and looking back and being like, man, I didn't live the best life. And then the last story in the volume is The Country Nurse, which focuses on a traveling caretaker with ties to all the other characters throughout the trilogy, and that too kind of dips back into the past. So it's interesting, all the stories kind of peripherally tie into one another, even though a lot of the series is told through flashbacks. And the stories are heartfelt, poignant, and most of all that they come off very real. This is kind of the breath of fresh air that you could really use, but you might not know it as you're reading all the kind of oversaturated superhero fare. So it's really good. I would definitely recommend checking it out. Also, Lemire's eye for cinematography is apparent through all of his work, but it's never illustrated better than through this series. His attention to pacing and the sense of isolation that he conveys with just a stark black and white, his kind of marker-infused, sketchy drawing is just perfect in this. This is my first exposure to his work, and I feel like it's kind of set the high water mark ever since. This is what I always kind of hold his stuff up to when I compare him.
Next, he tackled a new take on the Invisible Man mythology with his series for Vertigo Comics, The Nobody. A small-town retelling of the classic story, The Nobody features more of what we've come to expect of old Lemire himself.
Oh, man.
That crazy Canuck. Creating a flawed but likable protagonist, attempting to find salvation for his own literal undoings from the past.
So, last on this list, for this video anyway, we may do more, is 2012's The Underwater Welder, which is currently in the works to be adapted into a film, helmed by none other than Ryan Gosling. Big fan of his own indie-style work. I think him and Lemire are good pairing there. So I hope this goes through.
Me too.
Me three.
Oh, you got me there.
Underwater Welder's about Jacques Joseph. He's an offshore oil rig worker and soon-to-be father who's feeling the pressure of the upcoming birth of his first child. He's almost drawn away to the ocean. Like he just needs to get out of there, like he needs to escape.
Yeah.
And in the ocean, he encounters this kind of supernatural presence at the bottom of the sea, which puts him into contact with his own dead father, and then it kind of unravels into this bizarre, almost Twilight Zone style mystery.
Yeah.
So what did you think of Underwater Welder? You just read this a couple days ago.
Yeah.
I read it about a year and a half, probably. I liked it a lot, and I read it after Essex County, so went from not the mundane, but the very realistic to a little bit more of a supernatural type of story.
Yeah, even though it is more supernatural, it does really do a great job in like grounding. These people feel real because they all have faults and they're greatest of people.
Yeah.
You meet his father in it, and he's kind of a bit of a scumbag, even though he still wants to be there for his kids. So it's you still see like both sides, and it's kind of tragic how he just keeps screwing up.
Yeah.
And so you can tell he just wants to be there for his kid, but he just has his own problems he has to deal with. And like it almost mirrors the main character as well, because like he's not there for his wife and other people as well.
Right.
So it's, even though it's not the same kind of circumstances, it's weird to see like father like son.
Oh yeah.
Thing.
Yeah, and I forget, does he have, what are his feelings on his father throughout this?
Generally positive, but the more he goes and back and kind of deals with the problems with his father, I think he grows to like him a little less, but he still holds him at like a high pedestal. You know?
Well, I think it's interesting. A lot of kids view their parents as like these untouchable, godlike people.
Yeah.
And then I think as you get older, it's this kind of startling realization that they're
Just
human,
people.
just like you. Yeah, and they're prone to faults. And like, wow, like I may be a better person than my own father. And like, what a weird, upsetting, like, thing to realize. You know, like this person that's essentially guided my upbringing, like they're not the greatest.
No.
But you know, everyone's human, no one's perfect, and you do the best you can.
Yep.
And that's kind of what this is about, like the realization of that. Like, there's no perfect answer for anything that he's looking for. It's just kind of like realizing he just needs to be there for his own family.
Right, yeah.
I think all of his characters in his books kind of seek like this redemption, and it's really hard to watch them go along and like keep missing it too.
Yep.
So without spoiling it, this does have a good ending. It's not like a really downbeat ending that, but that's not always the case in his works too.
Right.
So again, very realistic, very human. There's not always happy endings, but it's always interesting, and the characters are usually very relatable. And I mean, you can totally see yourself in some of these people, and unfortunately, it's not always the best qualities too that you can pick out.
Yeah.
But no, it was a good book, and I'm excited to read more stuff like this.
Yeah.
Like, I do
sure.
like his superhero stuff, but I think he fires on all cylinders when he has a chance to just completely, you know, take hold of his own story.
Yeah. And just to add to that too, Underwater Welder is a really quick read. You said you read it in a sitting.
Yeah, it's like the pacing of his book. It's very breezy. The art isn't so detailed that you have to sit there and just take in every single shot. Like it's almost like a storyboard. And with him having a film background, I could totally tell like he plots this out like he's plotting out a movie.
Yep.
And sometimes it's just quick sketch to get the or to keep the plot moving, which, you know, that's fine. Not every comic has to look the same. I can appreciate this just as much as a hyper-detailed Brian Hitch book.
Oh, yeah, sure. The art, if you're into, like, more contemporary stuff, I think this is where it's at. It took me a little bit to fall into it, but once I did, I settled right in, and it was pretty good.
Oh, yeah, yep. So that's where we'll stop today. I wish we had more time, but Lemire's bibliography is extremely extensive, as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode. This was fun, though, so we'll definitely do a follow-up episode or two on more of his work. We haven't even touched on Sweet Tooth, which was another Vertigo title that really rocketed him into the public eye. So maybe we'll do more of like a supernaturally focused episode on some of his creator-owned stuff, like Sweet Tooth, Trillium, Descender for Image, Black Hammer for Dark Horse, and Plutonia, I've heard, are all fantastic. And then maybe even a look at some of his big two work, like Old Man Logan or some of those.
Big two! Well, if you like this type of creator retrospective type of episode, let us know because we'd like to do more of them. Until next time, I've been Troy the Max Extreme.
And I've been Ghost Hunter Dave.
So join us next time, baby! Oh, no. That didn't work at all.